Welcome to the W.E.B. Du Bois Center on this Wednesday afternoon for what I hope will be a useful introduction to the man for whom this building and this center is named. And I hope we have time at the end of the talk to talk a little bit more about why this building is named for Du Bois. My job on a day-to-day basis is really to put people, whether they're students, school groups, members of the community staff here at UMass, to bring them into a closer connection with the legacy and the work of Du Bois, which here at the center we firmly believe has an active application to the problems and the issues of our current time. And so through this talk, I hope to familiarize you with Du Bois's life story, because I think his life story is important to understand because it has a direct effect on his thought, on his work. And by taking you, I can't tell you everything because I don't know everything, and also there's only an hour to squeeze 95 years of life into, but I hope to give you a sense of the key elements of Du Bois's work and how that touches on contemporary issues. I always like to start with Du Bois's dates. Born in 1868 and died in 1963, the very day before the famous March on Washington and Martin Luther King's Dream speech. The dates are interesting because 1963 feels like it's almost on the edge of the present moment. Some people in this room were alive in 1963. Most of us have parents who were alive in 1963, certainly grandparents. And I think it's incredibly exciting to think of this year as one that's sort of on the cusp of our own time. There is mass media, there is transatlantic travel, there is television, there is a sort of infrastructure of modernity that we would recognize. 1868, on the other hand, feels comparatively like ancient history. This country that we're in right now has yet to fully coalesce as a coherent state. It's only just finished fighting a civil war. It's fighting active genocidal wars against indigenous people in 1868. And it is trying to figure out its own democratic process through the Reconstruction, which of course becomes a great concern of Du Bois's. In the very year that Du Bois is born, the first, and by no means last, president of the United States to be impeached is undergoing that process as well, Andrew Johnson. There is no mass media of the kind we recognize today. There is no transatlantic travel unless you want to go by steamship. There is no internet, radio, etc. It is the past comfortably. And yet, in one lifetime, you can leapfrog from this distant past to the close present. And that is instructive because it tells us that history is never that far away. We're only 2 or 3 average adult lifetimes away from an era where there was slavery in this country, civil war, where women didn't have the vote, and where so many of the things we take for granted now just simply didn't exist. And also where many of the problems that we're still trying to work out now were being argued over. Du Bois is, and actually I always like to start with this slide as well, because some people are confused when they see this name written down that the French pronunciation isn't used. And some of Du Bois's family did use the Du Bois pronunciation, those who still lived in the Caribbean when he went back as an old man to trace his family roots. They said, oh, you look like a Du Bois. You're definitely one of us. But he always insisted, as you can see here, this is his writing, on the pronunciation Du Bois. And we don't know why. And we don't know who decided that it was going to be pronounced that way. We think perhaps his grandfather, perhaps even it was Du Bois himself. Perhaps his mother changed the pronunciation. We just don't know for sure. But I think it's always great to show this because it shows that Du Bois is very particular about how his name was said. But also it's a perfect riposte to those who insist on the European pronunciation. This comes not from the papers which are here at UMass, by the way. This is from a really fun and eccentric private collection in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, where Du Bois was born in February 1868, into an atmosphere of subtle and genteel racism, as Alden Morris put it in his book on Du Bois. Du Bois's mother's family, the Burkharts, had been in the area for generations. They had originally come over from New York, where their ancestors had been enslaved by Dutch colonists. Alfred Du Bois's father, is more of a mysterious figure because he disappears from Du Bois's childhood relatively early. And Du Bois gives multiple reasons for this in his memoirs. He's known for contradicting himself, or at least presenting alternative narratives across his various writings. And the one version is that Alfred went off to look for work and either died or fell into other issues and didn't return. And another version has it that the Burkharts simply couldn't stand him and ran him out of town. We don't know for sure what happened to Alfred, but we know that Du Bois was raised by his mother's family, the Burkharts, who had been in the Berkshires for many, many years. Du Bois could trace ancestors who had fought in the American Revolution. And if you look at maps of, old maps of the area that show who had titles to the various plots of land, you'll see many, many Burkhart groups. And it just is testimony to the fact that New England isn't the picture of whiteness that is often presented, the sort of idea that the Pilgrims are sort of sprung out of the ground one day. No, this area has always been one of diversity and of different identities, whether they be indigenous, black, or Hispanic. And that's a really important thing to remember, and the Burkhart family sort of bears witness to that. It's an interesting community for Du Bois to grow up in, and it shapes his life. He continues a relationship with Great Barrington as a place until the day he dies. And well might he have a positive association with it, because he is enormously supported by many members of the community, not least Frank Hosmer, his high school teacher, who you'll see there in the center of the photograph of Du Bois's class. And so, this slightly patriarchal or patrician benevolence, liberal kind of benevolence of New England is something that Du Bois benefits from. But as I mentioned with the Morris quote, it would be false to claim that Du Bois grew up in an atmosphere that was devoid of prejudice. He was the victim of what we would call today microaggressions and overt acts of racism. And he writes about one of these in The Souls of Black Folk, which was published in 1903. He says, "It is in the early days of rollicking boyhood that the revelation first bursts upon me. I was a little thing, away up in the hills of New England, where the dark Housatonic winds between Hoosac and Taconic to the sea. In a wee wooden schoolhouse, something put it into the boys' and girls' heads to buy gorgeous visiting cards, 10 cents a package in exchange. The exchange was merry, till one girl, a tall newcomer, refused my card, refused it peremptorily with a glance. Then it dawned upon me with a certain suddenness that I was different from the others, or like, mayhap, in heart and life and longing, but shut out from their world by a vast veil. I had thereafter no desire to tear down that veil, to creep through. I held all beyond it in common contempt, and lived above it in a region of blue sky and great wandering shadows. That sky was bluest when I could beat my mates at examination time, or beat them at a foot race, or even beat their stringy heads." So Du Bois's early experiences of racism furnish him with a determination to rise above the insult that is thrown at him, that is represented by the anti-Black racism that he faces as a youth, and to strive to be better than those around him who would put him down. And he does graduate top of his class with amazing regularity, both high school and at undergraduate and so on. And Frank Hosmer, this teacher, he really sees in Du Bois the potential to go on and pursue higher education. Du Bois's problem is that, one, he doesn't have the funds, and two, his mother is very ill, having suffered a stroke some years before. The funding is taken care of partially through a scholarship that he wins, and also through a community effort to raise the funds to send Du Bois to university. And the family issue is solved in the saddest way possible, which is Mary Sylvina's death when Du Bois was 18. And so when Du Bois does go out into the world, he does so orphaned to all intents and purposes, and with no direct relatives to draw on. He wanted to go to Harvard, God knows why, but that was what people in Massachusetts felt was the correct approach. And Du Bois had ambitions to go to Harvard that he would realize, but initially he simply didn't have the funds, and so he finds himself instead going to Fisk University a newly established university for the teaching of Black Americans who had been, in very, very recent memory, made full citizens of the United States. These are the children of the formerly enslaved, of people who had been freed by the Emancipation Proclamation, by the 13th Amendment. Fisk is still around. It's a historically Black college or university. It is a bastion of learning in Nashville, Tennessee. It has also in the center of its campus a really marvelous bust of Du Bois, it should be noted, and a fantastic archival collection related to him. For Du Bois, this is, well, I'll quote him. He said, "Here and immediately was adventure. I was going into the South of slavery, rebellion, and Black folk. And above all, I was going to meet colored people of my own age and education, of my own ambitions." This is the first time in Du Bois's life that he's been around significant numbers of Black people his own age. And the culture is different. Most of them are Southern, and he is not, as you can see in this picture. He is very much the stiff New Englander. He has to learn manners. He has to learn how to exist in this world and be a little bit less withdrawn and aloof. And of course, he falls in love with the culture of the Black South, with the Jubilee Singers, the famous choir at Fisk. He goes out in the summers to teach school in the wooden schoolhouses in rural Tennessee, and he becomes aware to an extent that he simply has not been up to this point of the Black experience sort of nationally and certainly regionally in the South. Another thing to mention, of course, is that this being the South, there is a bell on campus in the center of Fisk's campus, a bell that is rung not to assemble students for classes or religious observances, but to warn them of the potential of racial violence when the Klan is on the loose. This is a time of growing political racial violence against Black Americans as a response to the attempt at establishing racial equality that was Reconstruction. The impact of Fisk on Du Bois is clear from this letter that I've printed here, which in part reads that the university is very pleasantly situated, overlooking the city, and the family life is very pleasant indeed. Some mornings, as I look about upon the 200 or 300 of my companions assembled for morning prayers, he's writing this to a reverend back in Great Barrington, by the way, so it's clear that he's very keen to mention his regular attendance at morning prayers. I can hardly realize they are all my people, that this great assembly of youth and intelligence are the representatives of a race which 20 years ago was in bondage. Fisk is transformational for Du Bois, and yet he hasn't quite let go of Harvard. And so when it comes to pursue postgraduate study, it is to Harvard that he goes, and it's almost immediately a disillusioning experience. Later in life, Du Bois was supposed to have quipped that when someone introduced him as the first Black man to get a PhD from Harvard, he said, "The pleasure, I assure you, was Harvard's." He was denied membership of clubs. He was made to feel an outsider. Certain people, notably William James, really took Du Bois in, invited him into their homes, mentored him, but it was a frustrating experience. And again, one that Du Bois didn't just bow down to. As David Levering Lewis, his biographer, wrote, that Du Bois was not one to be deceived by surface civility or to turn a resigned and placatory face to institutional discrimination. Indignation, constant, intellectualized, and eloquently verbalized, must have been regarded by him as the only face worthy of being presented to a white society whose philanthropy was at best incidental and capricious, and at worst serving increasingly to segregate and emasculate his race. This white philanthropy is something that Du Bois turned to and had to demand it in order to study abroad in Berlin. He applied to the Slater Fund, whose president was Rutherford B. Hayes, and it was only after pestering Hayes himself, the former president of the United States, that Du Bois was finally granted the $750 stipend that he needed to travel to Germany and embark upon 2 years of incredibly influential study at the University of Berlin, now Humboldt University. "Europe modified profoundly my outlook on life," he wrote. "And why? because in Europe he was treated as a full human being for the first time, because they saw his position as a student and as a gentleman, as it would have been said at the time, first, and his racial identity second. In America, that was always the other way around. Du Bois would always be judged first and foremost by the color of his skin, not by his achievements, because of the way the racial codes were established in this country. But in Berlin, which was not a country that was devoid of racism, or Germany, which was not a country devoid of racism by any stretch of the imagination, Du Bois was treated as a full equal and given access to experiences and intellectual resources that his peers in the United States could never dream of. And this is very important when it comes to Du Bois's embarking on a career as a sociologist, one of the founding fathers of that discipline. I think he would have stayed in Germany much longer had it not been for his running out of funds. But instead he comes back, and he barely has time to pick up his PhD from Harvard before he's off to Wilberforce University in Ohio. I present this little chronology here because it helps keep track of these first kind of whirlwind years of Du Bois's academic career. Wilberforce is not a good fit. It is a religious school. Du Bois is teaching the wrong subjects, so he moves on relatively swiftly. He does, however, meet and marry Nina Goma, who is his first wife, and they stay married until her death in 1950 at Wilberforce. But that is the only thing really that Du Bois comes away from, apart from some slightly frustrating experiences and memories. His next destination is the University of Pennsylvania, where he is commissioned to conduct a study of the city of Philadelphia, of a particular ward, the 7th Ward, I think. This results ultimately in this great founding text, or one of the great founding texts of American sociology, The Philadelphia Negro, which is published eventually in 1899, and which had the revolutionary quality of being built on data that was actually collected in person by Du Bois himself, going out in his 3-piece suit and his cane, which he had affectations he'd picked up in Germany, to knock on people's doors and ask about their lives. This presents a comical image that has been used, to tease out this, the identity that Du Bois is occupying at this time vis-a-vis his race, adopting the trappings of a certain kind of elitism. And Saida Hartman has written about this in her wonderful book, Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. But it mustn't be lost sight of the fact that this is Du Bois doing two things. He's collecting data in new ways. And secondly, he's flying in the face of the expectations of those who commissioned the study, namely that they would find out that people who are in unfortunate circumstances, economic or otherwise, are largely there because of their own disadvantages. They're sort of predestined to be in a situation of criminality or poverty. This is the vogue at the time, was for this kind of scientific racism, social Darwinism. And Du Bois helps to start to disprove that and establish an understanding of what we now know as systemic racism, of the ways in which certain communities are kept in intergenerational poverty or with greater instances of criminality by resources, education, healthcare, and so on being withheld from them. So yeah, Pennsylvania and Du Bois, Penn and Du Bois, it's not a relationship that really lasts. It creates one incredibly important text, but Du Bois is off again, and this time he's back in the South, and he finds himself at Atlanta University. He has 2 stints, as you can see, at Atlanta, and this is the institution for him that really is the right fit. This is where he's able to do the work that he wants to do. And here, by the way, is Nina, who he met at Wilberforce and who I just want you to get to know. It's always too easy to write her out of the story. She's too little recognized in Du Bois's own writings as someone who was at his side and a companion throughout a great many decades, and who suffered a great deal, as we'll come to. The picture in the middle, by the way, was taken by their grandchild, Du Bois Williams, who passed away only 3 years ago. I've cheated slightly. These pictures are actually from Du Bois's second stint at Atlanta, but they give you a sense of the institution, and I think it's too exciting to be able to have this view into Du Bois's classroom from this interesting collection that's in, of all things, the Henry Ford Museum collection. But it's a wonderfully sort of evocative image of what it must have been like to be in his space of teaching. And at Atlanta, he conducts these Atlanta studies, this collection of data about Georgia. He's widening the aperture now. It's no longer just a part of Philadelphia. This is an entire state that they're collecting data on that will eventually form the basis of these wonderful data visualizations, which we'll come to shortly. But the reason I really want to pause on Atlanta has got relatively little to do with Du Bois's studies and his work as an intellectual, and it has much more to do with life events that are going to shift him from this path. And these life events happen right on top of each other in 1899, in the spring of 1899. In April, a man by the name of Sam Hose is lynched in Atlanta. Preceding the lynching, knowing that a mob was on the loose looking for Sam Hose, Du Bois had hoped that he could calm the situation by submitting an op-ed, essentially, to the Atlanta Constitution, the local newspaper. And it's on his way to the newspaper offices carrying a letter of introduction to the editor that news meets him that Sam Hose has been killed in a horrible way. He's been surrounded by a mob of hundreds of people. He's been tortured, he's been burned, and his body has been dismembered. And Du Bois is told that Sam Hose's body parts are actually on display in a grocery store window on Mitchell Street, down which he was walking. He writes in Dusk of Dawn, his great memoir of 1940, this is 40 years later, but the feelings must still have been just as fresh as they were in 1899. He said, "I turned back to the university. I began to turn aside from my work. I did not meet the editor of the Constitution. Two considerations thereafter broke in upon my work and eventually disrupted it. First, one could not be a calm, cool, and detached scientist while Negroes were lynched, murdered, and starved. And secondly, there was no such definite demand for scientific work of the sort that I was doing." So he's saying two things there that are of equal importance. One, it's not enough to just toil away in the ivory tower of academia when the reality of racism is so close and so potent, so violent and all-encompassing. And secondly, this scholarly toil is rendered even more impotent by an indifference to its findings by the academic community. Du Bois had the idea that perhaps through study, through exposing the roots of racial prejudice, that he could perhaps help solve the problem, but there was no interest in that. And we can see this parallel playing out often in our own time, that certain scientific findings are too inconvenient to be fully credited. So the thought takes hold and will really grow over the next 10 years of Du Bois's life, that he needs to find work outside of pure scholarship and become a public leader, a public intellectual. I think another reason for this is the fact that the racism of the South reaches into Du Bois's home in the most tragic way possible. And that is when in May 1899, a month and a day after the lynching of Sam Hose, Du Bois's infant son, Burkhart, pictured here, dies of diphtheria. You might say, well, this is the 1890s in an American city, infant mortality is common. But we know that had the Du Bois family still been living in the North, they would have had access to medical care that was withheld from them in Atlanta on the grounds of the Black codes, the Jim Crow laws that had been brought in to re-establish racial apartheid in the wake of Reconstruction. Burkhart's death can be interpreted, I think should be interpreted, as a kind of murder through social neglect. And it breaks Nina and W.E.B. Du Bois in ways that I think they never recover from, either as individuals or as a couple, even though they will have another child, Yolande, a daughter, who is born a year or so later. Du Bois writes about the death of Burkhart very vividly in The Souls of Black Folk, in a chapter that is amazing for its emotional honesty. He writes, "Is not this dull land that stretches its sneering web about me cold enough? is not all the world beyond these four little walls pitiless enough that thou must needs enter here, thou, O death? I think we can extrapolate some of Du Bois's feelings about the culture that has allowed this to happen to his child through that passage. He barely has time to mourn before he's sailing in steerage with his incredible charts and maps and other materials for the 1900 Paris Exposition, this World's Fair that takes place in France at the turn of the century. It's all about modernity. It's all about showing the exciting new technological advances that have been underwritten and made possible by these robust European white imperial states, such as France, such as Germany, such as Great Britain, and of course the United States of America. And Du Bois and his collaborators are able to carve out a little corner of the American pavilion for the exhibit of American Negroes, an exhibit whose express purpose is to situate Black Americans at the heart of the modernity that is the theme of this exposition. And Du Bois does that in a couple of ways. He does it through the data itself, which says no to again, disproves the social Darwinist theory that non-white populations are destined to languish and to eventually perhaps disappear, and actually shows them thriving despite only having escaped slavery a generation before. And he also does this through the design of the data visualizations, which are, if nothing else, incredibly modern. These images evoke the abstract art that would start to be produced at the time. And it is tempting to imagine some of the artists who gleefully appropriated what they call primitive art from the imperial possessions of countries like France, Portugal, and so on, to make their modern art. It's tempting to think of these same people looking at these wonderful charts and maps and so on and being inspired by them. Don't for a second imagine or underestimate how revolutionary this is. Data wasn't presented like this in 1899, in 1900. This that we now again take for granted. We've been looking at exponential graphs for the last 4 years, and election maps and interest rates and God knows what else. But this way of translating numbers and percentages and so on into a visually arresting and helpful mode is very new. It wasn't, this sort of data wasn't for the public at this time. It was for scholars. It was for those actually studying the numbers. And here it is, these maps are designed to make you stop as you walk past, make you examine them, make you remember them. There's some wonderful quotes about this from a book that was actually published right through this very center by our director, Whitney Battle-Baptiste, and Britt Russett, who teaches here in the Afro-Am department, where they argue that this exhibit foreshadowed new possibilities in communicating sociological knowledge and making it accessible to the very populations from whom the data was collected. Because it's important to remember that this exhibit went back to the States and went on tour so that Americans, white and black, could see it for themselves. And I love the words that Whitney and Britt put in their book, where they said that this was a cross-fertilization of visual art and social science, and it's a transitional moment in the history of the discipline. Du Bois doesn't stop there. This amazing decade just keeps going on. It's 1903, he publishes The Souls of Black Folk, a work unlike any other that he's written so far. This is a book, to be sure, of brilliant scholarship, but it is a book for a popular audience, and it's written in a lyrical, poetic fashion. There are no footnotes. The language is immediate. It is understandable. It is accessible. It's visual. It's also musical. Du Bois includes musical notations throughout the work, little snatches of poetry and song. Of course, famously the so-called sorrow songs themselves. And it is full of memoir. It is full of parable. Du Bois sometimes, throughout his career, starting with The Souls of Black Folk and continuing until he's a very old man, is able to find a way to communicate truths most effectively through the medium of fiction, which sounds counterintuitive, but when you read Du Bois's fiction, you realize that what he's doing is drawing you right in to the lived experience of the people that he's writing about. And Souls of Black Folk is full of those types of images. To become a public leader, one must organize, and Du Bois does this among many, many collaborators in the mid-1900s with the formation of the Niagara Movement, which meets for the first time in Niagara Falls on the Canadian side, because that's where they can actually find a hotel that will allow them to check in. This is a group of Black men from across the country. They will allow women in the following years who are dissatisfied with the current pace of change, who are not happy with the similar sort of the gradualism of Booker T. Washington, for example, who want rights and social justice immediately and are not patient to just sort of wait for the white world to catch up. It is a fascinating and wonderful organization that does not live beyond this first decade of the 20th century. It becomes sort of turned and twisted into an organization that survives to this very day, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Du Bois is a founding member of the National Association, and when it is established, he is its only Black board member. Ida B. Wells famously was pushed out. I think this offers us a moment to reflect on the compromises that are needed to produce coherent and powerful movements for social justice in this country. To make the National Association happen, the alliance of white, wealthy progressives was needed, and that money, of course, as all philanthropic money does, comes with conditions. And so this was an organization that from its very birth was more conservative than the Niagara Movement had been, but one that Du Bois knew that he had to be part of. And his greatest contribution, I think, to the NAACP was as editor of the Crisis magazine. David Levering-Lewis writes that Du Bois was the fearless editor of the Crisis, from whose thousands of heated pages scholarship, racial propaganda, visionary pronouncements, and majestic indignation thundered and flashed across Afro-America and beyond for a quarter of a century. You cannot understand Du Bois's career without understanding the Crisis magazine. This was something that he had a hand in every issue of, from its foundation in 1911, I think, to I really should write these dates down, to 1933, when Du Bois resigned from the NAACP. His contributions were sometimes as small as, his little sketches as the crow flies at the beginning of each edition of the Crisis. Sometimes there would be entire articles, but his curatorial voice is evident through each edition that's published under his editorship. This is, again, like with the graphs that I showed you, the infographics, this is an entirely new concept. There is no national publication by and for Black readers at this time. There were regional and city-specific Black papers like the Washington Bee, but there is no national periodical. And this platform that Du Bois now has is incredibly powerful, he uses it for all kinds of purposes. They are political, affecting how people should think about voting, or which party to ally themselves with, how to feel about international affairs. They're also cultural. They bring forth Black writers like Langston Hughes, and illustrators and artists. They celebrate great Black lives, like that of Charles Young, Du Bois's great friend, who was the highest-ranked the highest-ranked Black soldier in the American Army at that time. And they've helped to forge common connections between disparate Black communities, whether they be on the West Coast, in the Midwest, in the South, or in the North, and allow a kind of national Black identity to coalesce around this important publication. In its peak year, it has 100,000 subscribers, which, as you can imagine, represents much more than just 100,000 individual readers. In it, he publishes his famous speech that he gave in 1926, The Criteria of Negro Art, where Du Bois challenges Black artists to be spokespeople for the rights of black folk, as he says, to love and enjoy, that all art should be propaganda. And he says, right now propaganda is confined to one side while the other is stripped and silent. And so the apostle of beauty must become the apostle of truth. This platform isn't always one that is full of hope and aspiration. It also meets immediate needs, such as the resistance of this national sensation that was the first ever blockbuster movie, The Birth of a Nation, which was released in 1915. The film was in part so popular because it was screened at the Woodrow Wilson White House, and it essentially tells a horribly racist story about the Ku Klux Klan rescuing the white South from the depredations of black people during Reconstruction. It is a beastly picture with a horrible message, as you can see from this poster. And the Crisis magazine was a mouthpiece that Du Bois and his allies could use to resist this film. And the platform that Du Bois now has allows him to produce his great response, which is the Star of Ethiopia pageant, this cast of thousands, theatrical performance that is it's almost the sort of the souls of black folk brought to the stage. It's an eloquent and beautiful counter argument against horribly stereotypical and harmful representations of black people in white media, not just Birth of a Nation, of course, also popular novels and other films and theatrical performances and so on. Du Bois sometimes regrets his pronouncements in the Crisis. In 1916 and 17, he argues that black Americans should sign up to fight for the United States in the First World War. And many of his allies are, justifiably and understandably baffled as to why he would advocate that black men should fight for a country that disenfranchises and oppresses them. And when Du Bois goes to France and realizes the injustices that have been meted out to black soldiers, I think he comes to regret his earlier position, and he changes his. He never, Du Bois never contradicts himself entirely, or sort of goes, does an entire 180 on an issue, and he certainly would never be so gauche as to apologize for something that he'd gotten wrong. But he does change his tune and says at the end of the war, writing about black soldiers, said, "We return from fighting, but we return fighting. We saved democracy in France, and by God, we'll save it in the United States, or know the reason why." And it's clear as Du Bois continues to work on an ultimately unrealized goal to publish a book about the First World War, that this issue is one that's a stone in his shoe for the rest of his life, that there is a sense of serious regret about having advocated so strongly for participation in the conflict. Now, his presence in France puts him at the crossroads of history, because in 1919, the world gathers at the Versailles, the Paris Peace Conference and what becomes the Versailles Treaty, to carve up the map of the world, to take Germany's colonial possessions, Turkey's possessions in the Middle East, and to redistribute them to the victors. Du Bois and others organize to create one of the second iteration of a institution that had been brought into being at the turn of the century, the so-called Pan-African Congresses. President Clemenceau of France allows them to hold the first of this newly reconstituted Pan-African Congress in France. The second one is held in Belgium, and that's where this photograph comes from. And this is where Du Bois starts to engage in the issue of Africa, certainly, but also this issue of colonialism and decolonizing for the first, seriously for the first time. And he is now really treading into this role as not just a national, but an international public figure and leader. He makes his first trip to Africa in 1923. He said, writing about it later in his memoirs, "When shall I forget the night I first set foot on African soil? I am the 6th generation in descent from forefathers who left this land." He then brings this very evocative image of the boat approaching the shore in the moonlight and the continent looming out of the distance. It's clear that this was a stirring moment in Du Bois's life, one that he would never look back from. And he writes about Africa throughout his career. And I think One of the really interesting pieces is actually from before even the Congresses, before Du Bois even goes to Europe, is The African Roots of War, published in The Atlantic in 1915, which argues that the First World War was not some chivalric contest between white European nations. It was actually the product of their imperial ventures and jealousies around the world. Du Bois really is one of the first people to make what is now seen as a very important case, an important argument for one of the causes of the First World War. Later in his life, Du Bois publishes the brilliant book, The World in Africa, in which he sets European ideals and NATO transatlantic ideals of freedom and democracy in perspective by showing how hypocritical they are when it comes to Africa, and also centering the African history and in the world history, something that has, African peoples, African nations have been left out of and are still left out of world history. And so this post-war consensus of the Western so-called democratic powers is one that Du Bois can needle through the reality of not just colonialism, but also exploitation of the African continent. And I think this quote is rather wonderful, where he says, in 1945, Jan Smuts, Prime Minister of South Africa, who had once declared that every white man in South Africa believes in the suppression of the Negro, stood before the assembled peoples of the world and pleaded for an article on human rights in the United Nations Charter. Nothing so vividly illustrates the twisted contradiction of thought in the minds of white men. What brought it about? Asked Du Bois. What caused this paradox? I believe that the trade in human beings between Africa and America, which flourished between the Renaissance and the American Civil War, is the prime and effective cause of the contradictions in European civilization and the illogic in modern thought and the collapse of human culture. I think in a talk like this, which talks about one man's life, it's so easy to lose sight of the vital friends and collaborators that he had along the way, and we're running long on time here, so I don't have time to focus on everyone. I'll draw out a couple of my favorites. We'll come to Booker T. Washington in a second. Paul Robeson, the great singer and actor and fellow activist, was a tremendous friend of Du Bois's. There's an amazing anecdote where they're in Paris together in the early 1950s, and they walk into a restaurant and the band stands up and plays Old Man River, and how amazing it would have been to be there. But they were steadfast companions right from the days of the Harlem Renaissance up until they were both being persecuted by their own government for involvement with left-wing causes. On the bottom left is Jessie Redmond Fawcett. And I mentioned the way the Crisis magazine foregrounded black artists and writers. Well, she was the literary editor for the Crisis magazine. She is an undervalued and understudied but incredibly influential part of what will become the Harlem Renaissance, and in her own right, a fabulous writer. The novel Plum Bun is a brilliant read and contains a character who's very obviously based on Du Bois, who she was a long-term lover of as well. She and Du Bois had a relationship for many, many years. And yet, as is often the case in Du Bois's life, there are important women who he, to some degree, cultivates as peers and sort of he mentors, but who don't get full recognition by him in his subsequent writings. Another one of these is his research assistant Irene Diggs, who one of our fellows here at the Du Bois Center has done a great deal of research on, becoming the first scholar to actually work in Irene Diggs's papers at Morgan State. Du Bois also has famous disagreements. Booker T. Washington is one of them. We mentioned earlier that he was frustrated with Washington's conservatism. He writes already in The Souls of Black Folk that so far as Mr. Washington preaches thrift, patience, and industrial training for the masses, we must hold up his hands and strive with him. But so far as Mr. Washington apologizes for injustice, North or South, does not rightly value the privilege and duty of voting, belittles the emasculating effects of caste distinctions, and opposes the higher training and ambition of our brighter minds, so far as he, the South, or the nation does this, we must unceasingly and firmly oppose them. Washington and Du Bois would never really reconcile their differences, and I think in some ways Washington was very hurt by this upstart Du Bois, who came out of the North with his New England trappings to tell him, this great leader from the South, all the things that he was doing wrong. But I think there can be no doubt that Du Bois had important points to make in that debate, and that the unfortunate fact of Washington sort of choosing to overlook certain realities, choosing sometimes to invite questionable speakers like former Confederate generals to Tuskegee, shows that he was a little bit too willing to compromise. Of course, I'm allowed to be partisan as someone who worked in the Du Bois Center. It's interesting, though, when you look at Du Bois's later rivalry, I don't know if that's the right word, but disagreement with Marcus Garvey, to see the roles reversed. Here, Du Bois is more in the Washington role as the more conservative, the more powerful member of this conflict. And the unfortunate subject of colorism is raised as Garvey launches the assertion that Du Bois is in part in his position because his skin is lighter. The rivalry between them becomes very ugly, and they call each other names. Du Bois calls Garvey fat and ugly at one point. There is real bitterness. Du Bois concedes that Garvey was an extraordinary leader of men, but he is alarmed by Garvey's advocacy of Black people going back to Africa, of his position on biological race distinctions, which make him some unfortunate friends in sort of white eugenicists. And again, this is a unreconciled disagreement between two incredibly important people in the history of this fight for racial justice in this country. Now, Walter White is another interesting character. He is the secretary of the NAACP, a great fighter for racial justice, who's traveled throughout the South documenting lynching, and who is still a committed assimilationist who wants to end segregation first and foremost, but who takes a more conservative stance on the issues than Du Bois does at the beginning of the 1930s. When Du Bois starts to embrace what one might call a kind of Black nationalism, he argues that there is no assimilating with white society, that Black people instead should form, as he calls it, a nation within a nation with its own economy, its own culture, and separate themselves from white America, who are showing no signs of extending any kind of hand of friendship or equality. This alarms the board of the NAACP so much that it results in Du Bois's resignation from the organization. And that's when he finds himself back in Atlanta, conducting the work that will go into some of these books. And of course, some of them have been published previously. Du Bois is constantly writing throughout the time that I've been describing. These are just a handful of some of his lesser known titles. If I could recommend just one of these, I would say you should read Dark Water, which in some ways is the Souls of Black Folk 2. It is an older man using the same technique of some fiction, some poetry, some memoir to tell a story of race in America. It contains the magnificent short story, The Comet, which is a sort of science fiction tale that kind of has to be read to be believed. But the great work that Du Bois goes back to finish at Atlanta is Black Reconstruction in America, his story of a time that had already at this point been completely twisted and distorted by not just films like Birth of a Nation, which I mentioned earlier, but also by a very, very powerful white supremacist historical sort of scholarly school, the Dunning School out of Columbia University in New York, which had really sort of set the narrative pattern that Reconstruction was a mistake, that the South had been unfairly treated. They helped espouse the so-called lost cause myth of the Confederacy. And the reason I post these pictures of these charming individuals on the right, as it was, no pun intended, is that this debate is still with us. Black Reconstruction is as we speak, being lambasted by conservative commentators who accuse it of being in this, having this mission to force critical race theory on the unsuspecting American populace and make them feel bad about their past, telling a version of history that they are not comfortable with. I think this is, in many ways, Du Bois's most important scholarly work, and it is a very, very important resource in our own time. I think reading Black Reconstruction now has never been more important, as as not just the history is being contested, but the very rights for which Reconstruction was trying to advocate are also being contested. The role of government in our lives is sort of up for debate, I think as the year rumbles on, it will only keep its relevance. I do a whole talk on Du Bois and this subject of the Reconstruction, emancipation, memory of the Civil War. So I won't go into the exhaustive detail here that I really want to, but I will mention this quote from Lerone Bennett, the editor of Ebony magazine, who gave the keynote speech here at UMass when the Du Bois papers were opened to the public in 1980. He said, Du Bois raised in his lifetime, and he raises in his papers, the fundamental question of the meaning of scholarship. What is scholarship for? Can it serve the many instead of the few? He says, it's easy to see that the whole life of this exemplary scholar was a devastating practical critique of the shortcomings of American scholarship. The devastating practical critique, I think, is exemplified in Black Reconstruction. You might think that this is enough for one lifetime, but no, Du Bois into his 80s is continuing to advocate for social justice in the form of the very dangerous activity of during the Cold War period, during the era of McCarthyism, criticizing American war-mongering, nationalism, anti-communism, and this gets him into a huge amount of trouble and leads to him being put on trial by the United States Justice Department. The Peace Information Center, an organization which Du Bois had been a member of, and actually at the time of the trial had ceased to exist, had done nothing more than disseminate anti-war propaganda, and yet it was deemed to be pro-Soviet enough that Du Bois and his comrades in this struggle could be labeled as agents of a foreign power. Du Bois was given the option to not contest the charges and therefore not face a jail sentence. He chose instead to face the trial. It would have carried 10 years in prison if he'd been found guilty. He was 83 years old, so the consequences of such a sentence are not worth contemplating. Fortunately, the prosecution's case was so flimsy and the outcry of support for Du Bois was so overwhelming, including from Albert Einstein, of all people, who offered to serve as a character witness, that it was dismissed. And actually, Du Bois was disappointed that he never actually got to take the stand. And so instead, he wrote one of his great books, In Battle for Peace, all about his experience of the trial. And when I talk about the Du Bois, the writings of Du Bois being relevant to our own time, I think sometimes especially of this passage where he, after the acquittal, writes this reflection. He says, "What turns me cold in all this experience is the certainty that thousands of innocent victims are in jail today because they had neither money, experience, nor friends to help them. The eyes of the world were on our trial, despite the desperate effort of press and radio to suppress the facts and cloud the real issues. The courage and money of friends and of strangers who dared stand for a principle freed me. But God only knows how many who were as innocent as I and my colleagues are today in hell. They stagger daily out of prison doors, embittered, vengeful, hopeless, ruined. And of this army of the wronged, the proportion of Negroes is frightful. We protect and defend sensational cases where Negroes are involved, but the great mass of arrested or accused black folk have no defense. There is desperate need of nationwide organizations to oppose this national racket of railroading to jails and chain gangs, the poor, friendless, and black." I think as we reflect on the carceral state of the prison industrial complex in 2024, it's chilling to read those words from 1952. At Du Bois's side throughout the trial was his second wife, Shirley Graham, who was a fantastic scholar and writer and playwright in her own right, and who was a invaluable companion, both physically, morally, intellectually for Du Bois in his final years, and who we have to thank for shepherding his legacy through the choppy waters of the Cold War period and helping to preserve it, both in physical form in the shape of the Du Bois papers, but also in the minds and in the hearts of those who had perhaps stepped away from Du Bois in the wake of his trial. The prosecution that Du Bois faced in the 1950s resulted in his passport being taken away. The same fate befell Paul Robeson when a Supreme Court decision rescinded this right of the US government to take people's passports away that it didn't agree with. Du Bois embarked on a world tour. And I present these pictures as a fun pair, on the one hand showing Du Bois centering himself at the heart of European civilization in Rome in a very deliberately posed photograph. And on the other hand, standing with perhaps a questionable friend in the shape of Mao Zedong. And that's one thing we should always allow ourselves to be when we look at Du Bois, is a little critical. And I think perhaps one of the things we can criticize him for in his late career is overcompensating in the shape of his disagreement with the United States, his feeling, his justified feeling that the rights of citizens were being trampled in this country in favor of Cold War policy in the military-industrial complex. But that led to a willingness to overlook certain problematic realities of other regimes, shall we say. Du Bois's life ended, as I mentioned earlier, in Accra, Ghana, where he was invited by Kwame Nkrumah, the president of this newly independent country, to spend his final years. One of the last great speeches given by Martin Luther King Jr. was a speech honoring Du Bois on what would have been his 100th birthday in Carnegie Hall in New York. And he said in the speech, "History cannot ignore W.E.B. Du Bois because history has to reflect truth, and Dr. Du Bois was a tireless explorer and a gifted discoverer of social truths. His singular greatness lay in his quest for truth about his own people. There were very few scholars who concerned themselves with honest study of the black man, and he sought to fill this immense void. The degree to which he succeeded discloses the great dimensions of the man." Quickly, I'll just mention as the bells ring outside, signaling that I've taken an hour of your time already, and so I want to conclude and have time for questions. But these papers that Shirley Graham Du Bois looked after with such care arrived at UMass in the early 1970s, thanks to the efforts of Randolph Bromery, the first Black Chancellor of UMass, and many others who were here in the late 1960s, who had been responsible for founding the Department of Afro-American Studies here, one of the first departments of its kind in the country. And this just astonishing archival resource came here in the 1970s, was preserved chemically, was catalogued, and was finally opened to the public in 1980 and formed the bedrock of the first sort of great biographies of Du Bois by David Leving-Lewis that I've quoted from, and so much Du Bois scholarship since. The library that we're standing in now, or that I'm standing in now, you're sitting in, was named for Du Bois in 1994. The Du Bois Center was opened in 2009, despite being something that Randolph Bromery had hoped to bring in as early as the 1970s when he wrote memos about it, as a place for everyone to be able to access the legacy of Du Bois, whether it's through reading groups. We have our weekly breakfast with Du Bois that now meets on Zoom. We have lectures by great scholars, that's Dr. Bailey Thomas. We have poetry slams. We've given away birthday cake and copies of The Souls of Black Folk. We do everything and anything to put people into contact with Du Bois's legacy. And we are helmed by our fearless and brilliant director, Dr. Whitney Battle-Baptiste, pictured there in the middle, holding the W.E.B. Du Bois Medal that was conferred to her by the Berkshire chapter of the NAACP in 2018. So I would like to conclude with this final message of Du Bois, because I think it ties together the argument that I've been trying to make through this talk of our job of continuing to think with Du Bois about the issues of social justice in our time. But also, I think it gives an optimistic message, perhaps one that's needed now more than ever. Live and believe in life. Always human beings will live and progress to greater, broader, and fuller life. The only possible death is to lose belief in this truth, simply because the greater end comes slowly, just because time is long. He wrote this 4 years before his passing in 1963. So I'll say thank you and invite any questions at this moment. And apologies for having to rush through and sidestep so many exciting rabbit holes and inevitably skip over things that I know you will have wanted me to dwell on more thoroughly. Yes.
Would you describe what's as a grand nationalist and like at what point Buffett's theory would find that in studies?
I think I'm not sure that I would entirely, because I think that it flourishes as an idea, this self-segregation idea for a short period, and sort of comes to a head during the debates with the NAACP that result in his resignation. But from then, it's not that he sort of carries Black nationalism as a torch. It's, for example, with Black Reconstruction, the argument is that Black Americans are fundamental to the establishment of American democracy in the 19th century, that they are a crucial part of the economy and of the political and cultural life of this country. And I think that the rights that Du Bois starts to argue for in the 1940s, sort of going against the dominance of the world by wealth and corporations, by the military-industrial complex, is an argument that's all-encompassing, that's for all peoples. So within that, Black nationalism would be disruptive. I do think that it's not a position he would have ever said, well, I think, unlike, for example, his famous talented tenth, the controversial idea that the Black race was going to be saved by its most educated 10%. That was an idea he rode back from. He rode back from the First World War argument. He never really went back and disavowed what he'd said in the 1930s. So I think you can take from that Black nationalism certainly was something that he, for a short time really advocated for. And I think that was there sort of in the back of his mind, but was not maybe at the forefront of his, it wasn't the sort of the top of his list of priorities later in life, where I think he really saw the way in which everyone was getting oppressed by the way the world was ordering itself. That's just my reckon, though. I mean, I know that there are many, many, many different views on that. So, do seek those out. Any other questions? Well, I must have covered everything.
His trip to China, when I was at his house, he had gifts he got.
We have some.
I think he was overwhelmed, in terms of listening, thinking about what Bashir asked and the way he asked, that I think he wanted to encompass more of the world that was oppressed. Right. Most of it was Black and brown people, but I think he thought the Chinese had a connection there too at some point. And not that he was communist as opposed to fascist and both. I just think he encompassed many of the colored people in the world and decent white ones also.
Yeah.
So I think he stood for many, many positive things in terms of African American people, but I think he wanted to reach out to so many, especially to Africa and so many other places that have been taken over.
Yeah, I think the way he described himself as a citizen of the world later in life is very significant, and that's not just for his work as a Pan-Africanist. It's this work in China, his visits to the Soviet Union, Latin America too. This is all part of his global picture, seeing they didn't have the phrase the global south back then, but I think he would have identified with the global south more than anything else at that point in his life. And it's also true that, as Joy James made this point in the annual Du Bois lecture, was held at the Old Chapel just a couple of weeks ago, that late in life, Du Bois, the only people who didn't abandon Du Bois when he became too controversial were thinkers on the left of all races. That the socialists, communists, trade unionists were the ones who gathered around him and supported him at a very, very dangerous moment.
I'm thinking of the importance of that and the Paris World Fair.
Mm-hmm.
Also, that it was so important for him that he traveled there, he bought his own ticket.
Yeah.
And because it was so important for him to put it up in a way that people would understand it.
Yes.
So thinking also of that being a world art fair.
Mm-hmm.
We just as a reaction to this kind of feeling being of the world.
Yes. Yes. I think
he used the word universal also in this context.
Oh yeah, universal concepts, truths, universal truths. These ideas crop up in his writings a lot, and I think, to reflect on Paris is really important for a couple of reasons. I think yes, it is his debut as an internationalist, but also I think it teaches us something about his methods. Du Bois was a very careful curator of his work, and that comes across in his papers even. What kind of child keeps a letter that he wrote to his grandmother in 1883 and then carries it through the rest of his life? He's consciously collecting an archive from his early age because he knows that he's going to be something. So it's very he's remarkable in that regard, and that's that same kind of curatorial voice is at play in his writings, because yes, Du Bois shifts over time, wears many different hats, changes his views on stuff, but he still gives us a through line. There's still a very, very clear kind of omnipotence in his self-presentation that's very disciplined, and you can see that in some ways when, for example, someone like Garvey does touch a nerve, and how prickly Du Bois can get in the moment. So it's just, I love thinking about Paris as a vector for understanding his whole career.
But I'm thinking of that also taking care so much of your past, not because he thought himself being so important or that he would be so important in the future, but as an example that everybody is so important.
Yes.
Like using himself.
Right.
I have the right, like everybody else.
Yes.
That is kind of at the core.
Yes. And I think that's important. And I think it's important to talk about, this idea of collecting materials, because everyone has the right to an afterlife, and not just the people who are elected by the wider society as having value. I think that's important to reflect on as we think about our own duties here at UMass as the stewards of Du Bois's legacy, because archival collections like this are rare still, comparatively, for non-white, non-male people. That people who aren't white men. It's the Du Bois papers are a treasure for that reason, and for the reason that they're open to the public, both in person and digitally. They're not behind some kind of paywall like they would be at Harvard or somewhere else. But no, they are an example in and of themselves of a resource that we need more of, and that Du Bois is conscious of that from the beginning. Oh, sorry, Adam had a question. Then you on.
I'll ask a quick one. That actually could lead in the interest in universal rights and the value of all people, especially as he gets in the sense of the world.
Yeah.
And I know there's no shortage of his writing about the I don't know what's in the failure of racist healthcare policy. I think it's a system. It's one of these things we say a lot these days. It's not a broken system. It's a system that's working its way it's supposed to.
Yes.
It happened in 1899, and of course, an interest in Julia Derricott. This writing her. thinking about his reaction to Garvey and Garvey's strange bedfellows, his interest in racial theory. What did Du Bois have to say about the intersection of blackness and disability?
Gosh, I don't.
I know that's a weird thing. Like,
I will not sit here and prevaricate. I don't know the answer to that question. I wish I did. It comes up. But one way in which it is raised in both his fiction and in his other writings about the 19th century is in the form of the physical and emotional trauma borne by victims of racism. But I am struggling to think of a moment where Du Bois engages with disability from birth, of someone's. I will need to go and do some more reading about that.
But, I was thinking, because we read every Monday. On Monday morning.
Oh yes, Breakfast with Du Bois every Monday on Zoom, 9:30 a.m.
Horrible picture of someone at breakfast somewhere.
Shall I go back to it? Yes.
But half the time we're saying all the time, gosh, you could have written this last week. So to say that he was aware and that a lot of his feelings and things that he wrote about, in the early 20th century and all of this stuff he's right. He could have been written yesterday, last week. And and he talks about often the, result of that. And it's absolutely accurate and on point. So he was a citizen of the world, but he was also someone with foresight that really, it shows in his work. So, in some of his works, but the things that we've been reading, it's just amazing that, we could talk about it like it happened last week or last month. And that's very unusual also.
Yes. I think this idea of Du Bois being someone who has foresight and who's, when you read his works and think, gosh, this really is like he's describing the current moment. There's two things at play there. One, frankly, is the truth that so many of the issues haven't gone anywhere, that we are still living with frightening wealth, discrepancy and awful, militarism and war and ethnic cleansing throughout the world and systemic racism. And that's, that is a truth that has not gone away. And in some ways it's become more entrenched. I also think it is, it's again, Du Bois writing in a way that's deliberately meant to be, not just a snapshot of a time and place, but a sort of constant intellectual companion for the reader to stretch beyond his own life. This is the Souls of Black Folk is not intended to just be a 1903 sensation. It is intended as an immortal work that you can feel that in the writing. Anyway, this was a pleasure, folks. Thank you very much.